Hello, and welcome to this webinar on staying safe during vehicle attacks. Hopefully, this webinar will help you threat-proof yourself and give you increased awareness, preparation, and response skills that can help you remain safe in this type of attack or any other type of crisis. Let's talk about the reality of these attacks and why you need to prepare. First of all, there's an increasing number of these attacks, and you will see more involving terrorists and lone attackers in the near future. And the reason for that is because they are very simple to execute. All that you need really is the will or intent to do harm and a vehicle. And in fact, you don't need any other supplies. And the supplies that you do need, you can actually rent or find anywhere. Now, what ought to scare a lot of you is that sometime around 2016, ISIS in their propaganda magazine called Rumaya, which is basically an English translation for Rome, referring to the fact that the Islamists believe that they will retake Rome, did an article on how to conduct these attacks. Not only did they do an article on how to conduct these attacks, they basically provided an infographic on how to do it. And here it is right there. And that really ought to cause a great deal of alarm. These are the lengths that these people will go to kill as many innocent people as possible. And you can see their advice right here. Get a heavy truck, get a fast truck with a little bit of a raised platform. Look for crowds and large outdoor events, outdoor rallies, markets, anywhere where you can find pedestrians in congested areas. So what that means for all of you is that crowds and vehicles are everywhere. No location is truly off limits, and it's up to you to be able to respond to protect yourself and your loved ones. Let's dispel a few myths here and ask ourselves, what is holding people back from preparing for these events? Well, number one, a lot of people believe it won't happen to me. Well, the recent attacks in Germany and in the United States and New Orleans show that this is not the case. These attacks do happen with some frequency, although they tend to be underreported to a degree, but they can happen anywhere, not just Europe, not just the United States. Canada has experienced them. The UK has experienced them. They happen all over the world. So yes, they can happen. Next, people believe that the professionals will handle it. Even if there are law enforcement officers on the scene, as there were in New Orleans, doesn't mean that you're not going to have to take some measures into your own hands. In fact, in a lot of critical incidents, the first 3 to 5 seconds have the biggest impact on your level of safety. So you've got to act very quickly. And even if officers are around, the first 3 to 5 seconds for you is critical. Of course, it can be minutes or hours later, and you're still going to be responsible for your own safety. Lastly, some people believe that barriers will stop these attacks. Well, as you can see from this photo right here, the vehicle the attacker used in New Orleans easily maneuvered around a police car, and some of the barriers were broken. What's true in the attack cycle, which I talk about in some videos on YouTube, is that an attacker will not launch an attack until they believe that they can defeat all security measures that are present. So even if barriers are used, they will find a weakness in them. They will find their way around them, or they'll simply wait to attack a crowd that is outside the protection of the barriers. The big takeaway here is that it's your personal responsibility, and preparedness is your best defense. Here I'm going to review a few of the case studies, and there are many, but I'm going to select just a couple here. Number one, in 2016 in Nice, France, 86 people were killed and over 400 injured by an ISIS-claimed attack that occurred with a large truck during Bastille Day celebrations. Now, that casualty count is alarmingly high, and all it took was a truck and the will to do it. In 2016, there was an attack in Ohio State University where an attacker used a car to drive into people and then jumped out with a knife. And he wounded 13 before he was taken down by an officer at the scene. Now, I'll tell you very proudly that it is an instructor that I trained that trained the officer who responded to this. And I debriefed the officer, and he claimed that the training we provided for him really helped him prevail in this crisis. And he later received a Presidential Award for Valor for his actions during that attack. So these attacks are very personal to me, and I have had an influence on them. Next, in 2017, there was a Manhattan bike path attack where an Uzbek immigrant, following ISIS guidelines to a T, according to police officials at the scene, killed 8 people. 2017, there was a London Bridge attack where 8 were killed and 48 injured by 3 terrorists who rented a truck and then jumped out with knives. They also wore fake explosive vests to add to the chaos. What should be noted here is they tried to actually rent a larger truck, but were denied for some reason related to their credit cards or something of that nature. So the attack could have been much worse. 2021 in Waukesha, Wisconsin, there was a Christmas celebration parade. 5 people were killed and 50 injured by a driver who I will call is basically a crazed driver at this point. There may be some other motivations as well. In 2024, we had the German Christmas market attack where 5 were killed and 300 injured by a mentally ill man who exploited an opening for emergency vehicles. It was designed to let them into the celebration. And then, of course, in 2025 in New Orleans, we have our recent attack with 14 people killed, 35 plus injured in a very complex ISIS-inspired attack, combining vehicles, firearms, and explosives.
It began at 10:08 p.m. A white van heading south on London Bridge suddenly swerves off the road up on the sidewalk and accelerates, running down pedestrians, leaving them broken and bloodied on the pavement.
We heard a crash almost.
Big loud noise.
A lot of loud noises.
3 men get out, armed with long knives, head towards the bustling borough market and begin slashing and stabbing people indiscriminately.
They said that this is for Allah, and they just, all 3 of them ran out, just like that, everywhere, stabbing her all over.
Police quickly cornered the suspects. Then a hail of gunfire.
Oh my God!
All told, 50 shots fired by 8 officers. And all 3 attackers dead on the ground, each wearing what looked like suicide vests but were fakes meant to spread terror.
So it's a pretty serious incident there. And even though they say the police responded quickly, look at the carnage that was still done. If you compare these attacks to attacks involving rifles or what they call assault rifles in the media, these attacks are much more devastating and produce much higher casualty counts. Now you can see right here, just with this list, the casualty count is up to nearly 1,000 with just this number of attacks. So these are very dangerous. You need to take them seriously. Let's discuss how we can give you the responsibility, the capability, and the confidence to respond to this type of crisis or any other event. It always starts with mindset. And I tell people that there are 3 big mindset shifts that you have to make. And the first mindset shift is that no matter how you live your life, no matter how nice you are, how pleasant you are, how much you want to de-escalate or talk your way out of situations, there are people that will do you and your loved ones harm, whether it's for ideological reasons or simply because they're psychotic, or maybe they feel that what you have is something that they want. But there are people out there that will attack you no matter how you live your life, and no one is invulnerable from attack. Number 2, understand that your self-defense and your protection is your responsibility. Do not outsource it to 911 and hope that, especially the hope that someone else will help you. Only today, and in the last few decades, have people in a place as safe as America, in a time as safe as we've experienced up till just recently, could people afford to outsource their safety to 911 and hope that someone else would show up and solve the problem? That is a really bad bet to make. So don't outsource your safety. Take personal responsibility. In fact, I would say it is the primary duty of any living mammal or human to look out for their own safety and provide safety for their loved ones. Everything else is secondary to your survival and your safety. Number 3, you have to give yourself permission to act and to be capable when you act. And that acting may at times include the use of righteous violence. You've got to get that set in your mind that there are permissible times to do that. Otherwise, you're just hoping that others will do violence for you. And that is the act of a coward. Now, look, everybody has different physical capabilities and mental capabilities, but do your best to prepare yourself within those limits that you have. Make yourself better every day. Next, we're going to talk about some planning considerations, the tactical twos, because having a little bit of plan before you go out, especially a flexible plan that doesn't have to change much from event to event, is going to be a very powerful thing for you to have to take the appropriate action if something arises. We talk about awareness. Awareness is critical. It's number 2 after mindset, because if you don't see a problem coming, you're going to have less time to respond. You're going to have less options available to you, and you're simply going to be less prepared to get into action. And then finally, the tactics that you can take to prevail and survive during one of these incidents. Next, this is one of the best videos that I've seen that kind of summarizes the whole events in New Orleans.
And officials say at least 14 people and the driver are dead. Dozens more were injured. Investigators believe the attack may have been inspired by ISIS. We caution some of the images you're about to see may be disturbing. Here's ABC's Lionel Moise.
This morning, the careful work of gathering evidence continues just over 24 hours after carnage on New Orleans' most famous street. New video shows the speed of the pickup truck that plowed into people, killing at least 15 and injuring many more.
We have dozens of people that got hit by this car.
Surveillance video shows the truck flying an ISIS flag coming down Canal Street around 3:15 a.m. before turning onto Bourbon and speeding into the crowd.
We ran one way, so like about 5 feet away from the curb, and we ran into the bar to be protected by the little divot.
Authorities identifying the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen and Army veteran from Texas, who they say was inspired by ISIS to kill. They say he was speeding down Bourbon wearing body armor and firing an AR-style rifle out of the truck, racing about 3 blocks before crashing, stepping out and opening fire again, wounding 2 police officers. Inside that rented Ford F-150, authorities say they found multiple homemade pipe bombs packed with nails. Sources tell ABC News on that flagpole is a black flag bearing the ISIS insignia. A fire at an Airbnb near Bourbon Street yesterday morning is now reportedly being linked to Jabbar. Officials say it appears explosive devices associated with the attack were made at that property. Officials say steel bollards installed on the street were unreliable and were in the process of being replaced ahead of the Super Bowl in February. Vehicles had been placed as blockades, but there were gaps.
We had barriers there, we had officers there, and they still got around. So we did indeed have a plan, but the terrorists defeated it.
Let's delve into planning here in what I call the Tactical Twos framework. Now, the Tactical Twos framework basically comes from the special operations community, where when we do mission planning and preparation, we use the phrase, 1 is none and 2 is 1. What that means is that you can expect important things to fail. So you always want to have, in the special forces, we call it a PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plan. Actually 4 steps to do everything that's vital and important. But if you just have 2, a primary and a backup way to get things done, or a primary and a backup tool to use, then you're going to go a long ways to being much more prepared than you would have been in the past. So on top of this, make sure you always have a backup plan. So you may be trying to flee at one moment, and then understand you might need a barricade, and then you might need to fight. And even if you're barricading in a room, never be satisfied with your position. Constantly try to improve your position, and then constantly war game and figure out what the next action might need to be for you to be safe. As part of the Tactical Twos, we basically keep it relatively safe, similar to the lines of any type of active threat response. So we have the Tactical Twos for alerting, running or evading, hiding or barricading, fighting, and then providing aid afterwards. Now, this is a basic checklist, and I'm just going to briefly go over it here. We do have a program on the Tactical Twos that discusses the checklist, has an ebook, a video explainer, and even an audio file, so you can listen to it at your convenience. But some of the planning goes just like this. For alert, you want to be alert to 2 potential areas of threat. So if you were at a street celebration such as Bourbon Street, you've got to ask yourself, where are the 2 most likely areas where harm could come from? And one of them would obviously be the barricade area into the venue. That would definitely be one. And maybe a secondary location might be an alleyway or something less expected. But those would be the 2 things you might pay a little extra attention to. Next, you want to have 2 methods of alert, overt and covert. An overt alert is just basically letting everybody around you know what's going on. And it could be red alert, red alert, red alert. Saying something like that will get the people in your group ready and into action right away, getting them to respond. You also want to have more of a covert signal. And this could be something like the name of an old dead pet, or maybe you call somebody by their middle name, or you say something along the lines of orange juice, orange juice. And the reason I use orange is because it's related to the color code. A time where you might use a covert command would be, for example, one time I was walking down the street downtown with my wife late at night, and up ahead of me, I could see what was obviously a homeless person who was suffering from some significant mental issues. And I just simply used my code word with my wife, and that let her pick her head up. She looked around, gained some situational awareness, spotted the threat, and then she maneuvered so that I was between the potential threat and her, keeping her safe. So any chance you get to use these covert words, use them, especially the orange alert method. And that brings us to the two signals. So the two signals are orange, which means get ready, get your head up, take some preparatory action, look around, develop situational awareness because we may be at risk. And then there's a red command or a go command, which means run, hide, fight, whatever the case may be. It's very important to spot threats early and give yourself the ability to take early action to keep you safe in case those threats do unfold into something serious. Okay, running and evading. You want to have two rally points. These are places where you can meet up and account for all the people in your party. Typically, you want one of these rally points or safe havens to be something relatively close and then something that is far. A close one is something that's quick to get to, and a far one is something that is separated from sight and sound from your current point. In the military, we like to use the term of being 2 terrain features away. It might be 2 blocks away or 2 buildings away in your case, but it has to be a significant distance away from where you are right now and a significant distance away from your near rally point. Now, this can be relatively simple. A lot of places I go with my family, we know that if we get separated, the car is the near rally point. And we will sometimes designate a far rally point. For example, I went to one of those trampoline jump parks with my family not too long ago, and the car was a rally point. We had a rally point inside of the building itself in case trouble happened. And then we had another rally point that we picked about 2 blocks away as we approached it. We made sure that that was pointed out, and that really was about it. So we basically had 3 places we could go to account for our people, whether they were in the building, outside the building, or if that was unsafe, somewhere else for them to go. Now, you want 2 routes to get to these rally points. When it comes to routes, there's usually the fast, simplest route to get out of there. And that usually is pretty obvious. But you have to understand that in a crowd environment, if everybody came in one general way, they're going to all try to go out that same general way, and it can create a stampede effect. And you want to avoid that. So another thing to do, which can really heighten your safety, is to look for some unusual exit. Now, this might be through the back of a restaurant. It might be something where you have to use methods to get out that aren't really typical. For example, you might need to take a chair and break a window out and jump into a patio and then lower yourself down. But look for some exit route that most people would never consider, and then mentally rehearse how you're going to use that secondary or that unusual exit. So a quick, fast route, and then something unusual and not expected that a lot of people wouldn't use. When it comes to hiding and barricading, they can mean the same thing, but just understand hiding is temporary and barricading is a little bit more permanent, or at least a little more long-term. And let's see why this is important.
Dozens of people duck for cover inside a Bourbon Street restaurant. Dramatic new video inside a fast food joint shows terrified young women sheltering behind the counter.
Now, the problem with that is they got in and then they stopped. Do not get into that temporary hiding place and then think that you're done. What could they have done to improve their position? Well, it's going to be hard to barricade those front doors, but if you're armed, you could at least maybe get to a position of cover and then lock down in that entranceway, or you could just go deeper and deeper into the building. Heavy vehicles, especially like that truck, could have easily smashed through the front glass of that building. So get deep into that building and look for an actual place to barricade. If you can't do that, the next option there is to find a nearby area of cover. So something that will stop bullets, maybe even stop vehicles, a hard planter, something made of stone, brick, rock, or whatever. Even if you're outside, maybe a restaurant patio, maybe sit somewhere where you can watch the street and then just pay a little bit of attention, do that quick mental rehearsal. Okay, there's 2 things that I can hide behind if things go down. Next, when it comes to fight options, you have to have the will to fight and the tools to fight back. You need 2 types of weapons, or you can have 2 types of weapons. Ready-made, which are weapons that you have on you for that purpose, or at least serve that as a secondary purpose, then improvised weapons that you might find around you. And then when it comes to aid, you want to have 2 trauma kits in 2 different locations. Now, when I go to crowd events with my family, especially around the holidays, I carry a small ankle medical kit or trauma pack with me. I've got a tourniquet, I've got combat gauze, I have some other things in there, so that I have something on me all the time, no matter how I'm dressed, even without bags and backpacks and things of that nature. I have something on me in which I can use to provide aid relatively quickly. Of course, you should always have a trauma kit, not a first aid kit, a true trauma kit in your vehicle as well. You should be able to stop serious bleeding with direct pressure, wound packing, and a tourniquet. And you should be able to handle airways. Now, most people don't have the medical skill necessary to do this in an advanced way, but at a minimum, you should know not to leave people on their stomach or leave people on their back. If they're conscious, get them in a position to help them breathe. And if they're unconscious, make sure you don't leave them on their face or their back. Roll them into that recovery position. All right, so what's next? Well, number one, I'm always going to encourage you to be your own true first responder. The truth is, when the news stories go out and they talk about first responders are now at the scene, as a police officer and a first responder myself, I always take a pause and go, no, the first responders are either there giving an interview to the police, or they're being loaded up into an ambulance, or they've got a sheet over them. You are the first responder. Police, EMS, everybody else should be considered your backup. So you have to have the capability and the confidence that you can handle yourself in situations to the degree possible.